All right. Hi,
Ooh.
everyone. We made it.
Yeah.
I'm Amy Jo Accardi, and I'm here with my friend Lulu, and we're super excited to talk about breaking free from emotional eating and restoring gut health for long-term success.
Nice.
I'm super stoked. I met Lulu at a networking event a few times, and then when I realized what she did, I was like, we have to chat on.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start by just introducing yourself and talking about what you do?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, in a really short nutshell, I help women transform their relationship with food. So it's not just about knowing what to eat, because most people do have an idea of like what is healthy and what isn't, but it's really the emotional barriers that get in the way, when emotions come up. And a lot of people use food to cope or to manage difficult emotions. And that really is, I think, what most people actually struggle with. The information part is like half the story, but the other part that people don't talk about as much is the deeper elements, because it's a bit more uncomfortable. You have usually food issues in my work, I've noticed, always points to something deeper. It's not just a behavior problem. There's something always deeper driving it. So that's what I do. I work with women to help them release these old patterns that are driving their unwanted eating behaviors. And I've been doing that since 2015, helping people one-on-one. But now that I moved to the States, I'm also beginning to do like a group container. And so those are things that I do. And I also have an online course so that you can take like a introductory approach in your own time, in the privacy of your own space. Yeah, so
Cool.
that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. So online, and then you're looking at groups, and then do you do in person as well?
I've hardly done any in person since I've left New Zealand.
Yeah,
So right now it's all just online. Yeah.
I know.
But I
Yeah,
do want to do that
COVID time,
eventually
like
once I,
everything's online.
yeah, I know everything's online now.
Yeah, as an acupuncturist, I was like, I can't really work online.
I
So,
know.
yeah, cool. So, well, I'm stoked about all of the ways that our businesses connect, and I'm excited about where this might go today. I like what you said about, a lot of people know that how to eat. Yes, and I mean we do and we don't, right? And there's so
Mm,
much confusing information, and that a lot of people don't realize it's emotional. And I wish there was more conversation about that because I think
yeah.
that, even in my own experience, when I've had different, health issues go on, like in my population, I work with gut health, and the number one thing that people with gut health issues hear all the time is it's all in your head.
Um,
Right. And I think it's kind of the opposite with eating is that we hyper focus so much on micro and macronutrients or foods or specialized diets versus like, why are we eating?
mhm.
Why are we choosing the things that we're choosing? And how much are we maybe trapped into a mold of what we think we're supposed to be doing and really not able to look at the bigger picture of like, is this serving? Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm interested in how you got here. And then from there we can go on to like, I'm really interested in what people come in for versus what you end up working with. Is
Oh, yeah.
that all right? So how's that for the first two questions?
Yeah, sure. How I got into it, it's a bit of a personal story, really, because I actually studied to be a lawyer, and I have a master's in law degree, and I used to work in that field only for a short period of time. But then, after having my first son, I think I had a bit of an awakening, and I just realized, like, oh, I think I need to be delving deeper into this nutrition world because I had an eating disorder for almost a decade, like in my 20s, yeah, late teens, early 20s. And so that was always something that was in the background. It's like, oh man, like this is what I'm really interested in because I struggled with it myself for so long. And then through my own healing, and then I studied eating psychology, and I realized, wow, there's like a whole world out there. Because I started with nutrition, right? I got obsessive with nutrition and thinking that, okay, if only I eat the right diet, then I'm going to be fine,
Yeah,
right?
and it'll be solved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think so many people fall into that. And it's really tempting because it's like, okay, something on the outside, right? Once I take that in, then I'm going to be okay, right? And so I went down that route for a long time. I tried like paleo, I did low carb. I did the whole like low carb track, because I thought, okay, carbs make you fat. So that was my personal story. And but then it wasn't until I studied psychology of eating that I something in me clicked, because it's like it's really not just about what you eat. It really is looking at all the deeper layers and what the symptom of overeating is actually for you. Because overeating isn't actually wrong, like from what I've learned. It really, and from my own experience and from working with clients, it's what you see on the surface, but there's always something under it. Like the amount of people I worked with where their relationship with their mother is the
Mhm,
main component in their
mhm.
food struggles is like it's just crazy. And so, yeah, so I guess that's kind of a bit of a backstory. That's how I got into it. It's very personal. I struggled with an eating disorder for a long time and just body struggles a lot for a long time, like decades. And then it really wasn't until I delved deeper into my own healing and then studying the psychology of eating and looking into nutrition, all this, and I realized, well, you really need to combine the two, like nutrition is not useless at all. It's very helpful. But if you're using it in a way to like try and fix yourself, to try and make, because you're not happy with where you are, or whatever, and you try and use that to fix you, that's not going to work for long. And willpower is just not the right tool for the job.
Mhm.
People who think they overeat is just, okay, I have a willpower problem. And it's like, it's not that willpower is irrelevant. It's just that this is not the time to use it. You know, like if you're chronically repeating a behavior over and over and over, it's not a willpower issue. It's something else big. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about that and then we'll get to the second question. So
Mhm.
um I'm thinking through a Chinese medicine lens as you're talking about
Yeah.
this because I also know that 9 times out of 10, food and digestive issues are relationships to mother. And in Chinese medicine, that's the earth element. And so,
Mhm.
just interesting fact, Lulu's father is a Chinese medicine practitioner.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that you have a lot of this in your background as well.
Mm.
I didn't learn this until, I went to school. And even in school, we covered it a little, but it wasn't until I worked with my mentor that I started to understand how, the earth element is the spleen and stomach. It's, when we eat, it's the initial thing that does the work after chewing, then the spleen and stomach are like, how can I take this food and turn it into something useful? And
Mm.
and the earth element is interesting. The flavor is sweet. And so when our earth element is imbalanced, we do tend to crave sweets. We crave baked goods and candy and cookies and all of those things that are really easy to digest, but aren't really serving our deep nutrition,
Mhm.
if we're overarching on those things.
Mm.
So, and I want to touch on a couple of these and then you can follow up. So that's the earth element where we're really looking at how was someone nurtured
Mm.
or not nurtured, how were we mothered? And I had a teacher that used to talk about like mothering should feel like a warm soup, warm and easy to digest. And a lot of people can't necessarily say that about how their mothering situation went down. And it's interesting how that unfolds into eating disorders and disordered eating. Is that a good way to
It
say
is. It is.
the other thing I like the perfectionism piece and the willpower. There's a thing with food I see a lot where, people are like, I think sushi is a really good example. It's so perfect, it's so fresh and it's so sliced and everything's so beautiful and perfect. And that feeds the part of us that is self-worth that wants everything polished and everything to look perfect on the outside, but is that serving our inside?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the willpower too is more kidney in Chinese medicine of
Love it.
if we just hold strong enough and if we just have the will and then if we don't, that really takes our needs out of the picture. We're trying to
Hmm.
muscle through and then what happens? We feel like a failure because we couldn't overcome our needs, right?
Hmm.
Okay, those are my thoughts on what you said. I'd love for you to
I love what you said because yeah, I oh my gosh, yeah. I never because like I never studied Chinese medicine. I grew up with it. So I have all these practices that are based in it, but like I don't know so much like you do about the spleen and different things. I just remember always eating the red dates that they're called jujube in English.
That's
That
out.
was like, like ever since I was like a young woman, my mum would always be like, before your period, you got to eat these to nourish the blood, all these kinds of things. So I grew up with all that and I totally love all that way of seeing. But yes, that nurturing piece. So that's actually huge in my work. So I actually see it as like the masculine and feminine. You've got to combine these two. So the modern world of kind of food is very like masculine centric and it's very much based on nutrition and it's quite reductionist, right? It reduces everything down to carbs, protein, fat, and then micronutrients. So everything is kind of in isolation and reductionist. Actually, it's called like nutritionism, so it's like instead of looking at the food as a whole, and in Chinese medicine, where it's very much about the energetic, what it brings to nourish your energy inside and how to balance the inside and outside, right? It's a more reductionist view of it. And so a huge part of my work is bringing in the nourishment piece. So if nutrition is the masculine, then nourishment is the feminine. So feminine is the mother, it's the moon, right? And then nutrition is the sun, right? What you can see, what you can measure, it's the light, it's what people focus on. But guess what actually drives your behaviors? It's actually the nourishment part. So in yin yang, that would be the yin, it's the nourishment piece, it's the blood, it's the thing that sustains you, it's the love. And so that
If
is,
you're looking at the yin yang for people
mhm,
watching, the black and white, the
yeah,
black is the yin and it's the part on the bottom, and it's the moon and it's the darkness and it's the minerals, it's the heavy part, where the yang is the sun and the
yeah,
bright, and the big exuberant part. And
exactly.
so the yang is the muscle, and the yin is often the deep needs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think what we've done in modern day nutrition is we've just kind of made it into a very reductionist solar experience instead of realizing that it's actually all the lunar and the emotionality, the mothering, the nurturing. That's what drives your behaviors really. And so
Mhm.
it's really so my work is really just about actually teaching like embodiment in a way, to actually be in touch with your body because the body is also the feminine aspect, and we trash the body like we kind of see it as a project to work on. A lot of my work is also in body image because you really can't divorce eating habits with this body image thing because why do people try different ways of eating? It's usually to lose weight, right? Like that's
Mhm.
usually the
Well, and even to be skinny, I know in the
yep.
US, like that's,
Uh-huh.
it's such a big part of our conditioning that,
Yep.
women only have value if we're skinny.
And that all goes back to that mother piece, believe it or not, because it's nourishment, like, and so if when you grow up and you watched your mother like criticizing her body, always feeling like, I don't know what to eat, or I eat too much of this, and her criticizing herself, as women, we internalize that because the mother is the first contact, like that's our model for how we be in the world. And so
Right.
that nurturing piece is huge. I think most of us just don't even realize how much nurturing we actually have suppressed because either we didn't get it as kids, and a lot of women also become like something called parentified daughters, where they kind of have to take care of their mother's emotions, and so they suppress their own in order to take care of their mother so that their mother's not moody all the time and so they can feel safe, because when mum's up and down, then you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. So, yeah, that's a huge piece, the nourishment part.
Yeah. Ooh,
Yeah,
it's a big one because with the parentification, as little kids, I study this a lot. And as little kids, we're in this family system and we're just living our lives, but we also are needing to survive what we're in.
yeah,
And so if moms are out of balance or if moms are not able to love themselves, which is common, by the way, like
it's
that's not
common.
fair.
Mhm.
And it's kind of glorified in our culture, sadly, that, if the moms are starving, they have a certain type of tension going on that they're mothering from, and we're picking up on that and we're trying to fix that. And people pleasing and fixing and
Yes.
codependency, putting other people's needs ahead of our own,
Yep.
that those are all earth stressors. Those are all stomach and spleen stressors, and they make your stomach hurt.
Yeah.
And that's what leads us to the Snickers bar, the mashed potatoes,
Yeah.
those deep emotional eating patterns, the whole bag of chips. You could probably add a few.
Oh my goodness. I love that you've added that earth element to it because that really is at the heart of it. The body, we're just a pinched off part of the earth too, and so it is that deep grounding we need. A lot of the reasons why we overeat, is actually for grounding, for that sense of feeling safe when we can't seem to feel it in our environment. Then food is reliable, right? And like this is also that certainty and uncertainty thing. Like one
Mm,
of our deep needs is to feel some sense of safety and certainty, right? And so
mhm.
if something is happening in our lives that's really stressful and we don't really know how to handle it, well, guess what is certain? A chocolate bar is very certain. Like that's going to make me feel a certain way.
Mm.
So that's a huge one too. But it does come back to that safety, earth, grounding, mother. It's the
Right.
part that really isn't talked about very much, but that is driving a lot of the behaviors.
Well, and I also really believe, and I know I've been practicing too long to that I'm very confident that we can remother ourselves regardless of how it
Oh,
went down.
100%, 100%. That's the
Yeah.
thing, right? Healing your
Yeah.
relationship with food doesn't mean you have to heal your mother. It just, it's
Oh
about
God.
you learning. Yeah. Like that's a tall order.
Yeah, that's a tall order. Well, yeah, and fixing anyone, right? And
No,
so learning how to get out of that pattern of trying to fix people or fix situations. I also learned that like we do that because we're ultimately uncomfortable and we don't know how to deal with our own discomfort. So we're trying to fix the people around us so we can relax,
yeah.
And I think that that must be related to food as well, of some of the reasons that we overeat or make the choices that aren't as nourishing as they could be.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it comes a lot back to worth as well, that sense of worthiness. Like if we didn't feel it from our mothers growing up, like if we weren't nourished properly, like going back to my own story, I don't think I was nursed for very long, like maybe 20 days or something, right?
Mhm.
And and being a mother now, I realize, I nursed my babies for like a year, like I was maybe trying to like compensate for what I didn't have. But but that stuff it goes really deep and you do have to just realize that as much as we want to like just fix things, it's like,
Mhm.
yes, you can do practical things. Like you can regulate your nervous system. These are all really great tools. And I do teach that, I do a lot of meditations in my courses and um, but you've got to do that in conjunction with being willing to actually look a bit deeper, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's like kind of similar to Chinese medicine in that it's not about symptom suppression.
Yeah.
It's all about figuring out what is the thing that is lacking or needing more balance, right? Like I would actually love to hear your stance on like overeating from a Chinese medicine
Mhm.
perspective, like because when you ask these questions, it's really interesting, right? It's like, why would you eat to the extent of being really uncomfortable, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we seek to avoid pain, right?
Yeah,
But
I'm like, I know why.
yeah.
I didn't know why for a long time, but I know
Mhm.
why. No, I well, yeah, because I was thinking as you were saying all that, like, um, okay. The biggest thing that came through was when you were talking about breastfeeding.
Mhm.
And I wanted to link it to Chinese medicine today
Yeah.
because I work with gut health. And, so my mom had Crohn's, has Crohn's. She was really sick for a long time. So I grew up watching her really struggle with that. And when
Mm.
I went to school, my teacher started talking about food as medicine. And I was like, yes, like I didn't know that that existed really before. And I was like, oh my God, that can be my job. And so the way that it all came through was so perfect and beautiful for me. I didn't set out to be a Crohn's specialist, but I started out I knew that that was my career. And the more that I learned, I always tell people that Chinese medicine is like medicine plus poetry. We're looking at all of these parts of you, of where you came from, your family of origin, what your genetics were, like what was their health like, what is your health like, what are the ways that you got sick in your life, and did you really recover or not? And that tells us a lot about the gut microbiome. And if you look at cravings or you look at the things that most of us are drawn to, if your gut microbiome is off, we're craving all the wrong things is a hard word, but we're craving things that it's not a pure craving from our body, it's the
Mhm.
pathology that's running the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so, as you were saying, like if suppressing symptoms is not going to lead us to success, and I would say in Chinese medicine, suppressing symptoms is the pathology. Like that is part of the liver trying to
Mhm.
assert control of
Mhm.
suppressing everything to get what it wants. And the problem is that we explode.
Yeah.
If you can't go through the front door, you're going to come out the side doors or the
Uh-huh.
back door. So I just found out a couple years ago that I wasn't breastfed, and I was devastated. I was like, oh my,
Oh,
and because when I was back in acupuncture school, I
yep.
was full-time in school, working late at night. I was still smoking pot back then, still drinking regularly. And at the restaurant that I worked at, they would feed us at night at like 10, and then I would go home and go to bed,
Mm.
which is a big no-no for
Mm.
a healthy gut, is to not eat
Mm.
before you go to bed.
Mm.
And so I got the norovirus at a restaurant. There was a cruise ship in Seattle at the time, and a bunch of people on the ship had the norovirus. And my friend and I went out to dinner and we got so sick. We were in bed for like 3 weeks. I mean, we couldn't get back to school. And for me, that was the perfect storm. That's what took me down, and ultimately woke me up to
Mm.
real state of what was going on with my gut. And so when I look back at like not being breastfed, that really changes your biome from the beginning. And so if you don't know how to supplement that, and plus I was a Dr. Pepper, Dorito, Cheetos, Slim Jim kid. I mean, we had most of my food was homemade at home, but we grew up on all those snacks all the time. And so it's interesting to look through all those things. And when I was like, oh my God, I wasn't breastfed, that makes so much sense. I have
Yeah.
to work even harder to repair that biome. And the more that I do that, the more I look at um, broccoli and grass-fed steak and sweet potatoes, and I'm like, yum,
Yeah.
right? It's easy to love that. I still love
Yeah.
chocolate, but my priority is like, I've gotten into such a better place with knowing when I eat that, how I'm going to feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a little bit of a Chinese nutshell. Like I like to tell my story because it's pretty severe and crazy, but I think it happens for a lot of people that, you know, we I'm just learning more with my friend Vanessa Hargroves. We did a live last week.
Mm.
She's the most amazing fermentation babe I've met in a long time. And
Mm.
she was teaching me about these other bacterias that we're supposed to get from our mother during childbirth or breastfeeding.
Yes,
Moms don't even have them anymore.
I know.
So what we're having to do to basically we're battling a food system that's trying to kill us. And so, how do we even wake up to the foods that we're eating that it might be hurting us, number one?
Yeah.
And how do we prioritize rebuilding a gut microbiome? And within all that, how can we still be living a life, be a person, and not
Mm.
get so hyper focused on food and gut and, only eating ferments or only, it's easy to get locked into that other end as well. So I'm curious
Totally.
if
I
that triggered stuff for you.
Yeah, I love everything you shared. And that does come up a lot, right? Because like when we get into that fixing mentality, when we think, oh no, well, I didn't get breast milk and I didn't get this, and you start going down that track again, right? That doesn't help because it's actually the same energetic signature as when you think, okay, something wrong with me, I'm overeating, right? It's the same, like looking at them as like, damn, I didn't get that. And I think it's fine. I think for a while it actually is helpful to just feel through the pain of that because it's grief, it's like I never got those needs met, right? And I think there is a certain amount of grieving that we actually do need to do, which is quite suppressed in this culture, right? I think probably in most cultures actually. I think about the Chinese culture, it's like, well, they're not very good at that either, right?
Yeah. They don't love the emotion.
No, they don't like that either. And so, yeah, I think so connecting with yourself and grieving for those things that you didn't get, right? That you wish you did. And I think that's really, really helpful. That's like part of the process. But then after that, at some stage, I don't know what your relationship with God is or with divine is, but I think we absolutely must anchor into some version of that, right? Because then you
Something bigger
start
than ourselves.
because you absolutely start taking yourself out of the victim place. And
Mhm.
then you realize, okay, well, if I'm a creation of the divine, then I'm not my history, And so that's another really a key part of my work as well. Like again,
Yeah.
you don't have to believe in God or you don't have to believe in whatever, but some kind of relationship where you are willing to surrender a little more than just trying to control this in your own hands. Because I tell you, girl, like when I was struggling with the eating disorder, like I tried to control, control, control. That's all I did. And it was just failure after failure after failure. Like at one stage, I was like afraid my behaviors would land me in hospital, because it was so destructive. Like I was binging and purging so often. And ultimately, what the spark that helped me heal was at like a really low point, like my lowest point. I was just like, oh my goodness, like I don't have a relationship with God and I don't know, but please help me. you know? And I think it really was that act of surrender that did open up the doors for actual healing. Because when we are trying to control, when we're trying to fix, that's all from our wound patterns, and that's not who we really are. So yeah, I think that's what came up for me when you mentioned all those things. Because it's true, we've all been through stuff. No one escapes trauma.
Well, that it reminds me of the phrase learned helplessness.
Yeah.
That, when we're little, we are reliant on adults
Mhm.
to care for us, and we may or may not have gotten what we needed, but they probably did the best they could with the tools they had at the
Yeah.
time. And when we're at a deficit, as a baby growing into a young child, you're growing and you might be at a deficit if you're not getting those deep nutrients. And so that can create brain patterns of like help, 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 help.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of times that's what leads to addiction. That's what leads to eating disorders. That's what leads to all the things in the department of what we'd say is getting our needs met inappropriately.
Mm-hmm. I love
We're
that.
grasping for all of these other things. And so I think that the act of being an empowered adult and, maybe reparenting that part of you that didn't get the proper nutrients for one reason or another, who cares why, that we can just have a redo now.
Yes.
Right. And we can from a
Yeah.
different place in our adulthood realize that we're not helpless and that even though things weren't ideal, we can be okay anyway, and we can
Mm,
grow from here. And
totally.
even,
Yeah.
if you look at, I remember when I switched from meat at the grocery store to buying better quality meat at Whole Foods,
Mm,
and it was such a jump forward in how the quality was so much better, the flavor, it just was such a huge step. And then when I went from Whole Foods to the farms, I was like, forget it, we're done. And just those little changes, though, they nourish your nourishment because, if you can afford higher quality food, do it when you can, do it where it matters, meats and organic vegetables, especially the dirty
yeah,
30.
the dirty ones. Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
Number one. And it also feeds self-worth in a really healthy way, right? To just upgrade who you're buying your food from and knowing where things come from.
Mm,
Because you're getting higher quality, you're getting less chemicals, and you're also, that's the metal part, right? That's the self-worth part.
yeah.
And the earth part is you're supporting your community.
Yes.
Right? You're
Yeah.
supporting the person that supports you, and you create this beautiful exchange where you're like, hey, you have a pastured organic farm. I do want to pay $2 a pound more
Hmm.
to get a chicken that doesn't shrink down to half the size.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually such an important part of building self-worth and nourishment because when you like actually prioritize what you're feeding yourself and then let's say you actually get it and then you cook it yourself, like there's nothing wrong with going out to eat, but when you actually cook something for yourself quite intentionally, that has it's a nourishing energy, It's like maybe my mother couldn't, care for me the way I wanted, but look, I can do it for myself.
Yeah. Do you think like when you look across the patients that you worked with over the years, this seems like probably a pretty big theme of how to get needs met and how to not overdo it. Right. And when I was talking about the sushi, it's like it's if our self-worth is imbalanced, we overdo it and we go to such perfectionism that we're still not getting nurtured. We're still in a cold, rigid thing, hoping for the best.
Mm.
So there's that piece. And I'm curious about some of the other patterns that you see on average. Like what are the things that are most familiar?
Mm. Self-worth, I honestly think is like at the heart of it. At least that's the people I seem to attract. Probably because it was similar to my own journey. But
Yeah.
other things, like you said, it's very we seem to learn through extremes. So like it's like you said with
I
the
wish we didn't have to.
I know, right? I'm trying to, yeah. Yeah, it's this, when you mentioned the willpower piece, and the kind of swing to the other side of just trying to dominate. That's actually what do you call that? It's like the two sides of the same coin. Like because when you're so afraid of messing up that you have to make sure everything is perfect, then that's also fear, right? It's you're just it just ex it's expressing differently. On the one side, it's like you're afraid that you're just never gonna get your needs met, and so I have to eat lots to compensate for that. And on the other
Mhm.
side, it's like, well, let me just eat so perfectly that nothing could possibly go wrong. But
Mhm.
that's not natural. Like you
Analysis
can you
paralysis.
can yeah, you can do that maybe for a week and then you'll just burst and then you'll go into the extreme of like, fuck it, I just messed up, so I may as well do everything. So they're kind of actually the same. Yeah, at the core of it, there's always, a deep fear, a deep sense of inadequacy, or if I don't get this, I'm gonna die. It
Yeah.
literally comes down to that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, we've got a few minutes left, so I want to
Mm,
make the most of our time. When you're starting to work with people, and I would imagine you help them wake up to some of their deeper patterns, and I think this is the thing that keeps us in the pattern of I've been to this doctor, that doctor, this healer. We feel like we're just constantly in this thing, and it's because we haven't found the person yet that's going right to the heart of
mm,
the matter and saying like, what about this?
mm.
So what are some of the questions that you ask people that help them start to see themselves more accurately and with more love.
Mm. It's really in layers.
Hmm.
We usually start kind of more on the surface,
Hmm.
because I don't think, people are comfortable diving straight into their
Yeah.
like family trauma on the first
Yeah.
session.
They're like, I eat
But
4 kernels of corn and I'm not okay. How can I do this? And you're like, hold on.
yeah, 1 second. Which is fine. Actually, some clients have it with like first session straight into the mother wound. Yeah, but I guess it depends. I mean, I do have like a system of, of what I kind of take people through. But I would say that like themes I definitely make sure to touch on is firstly that family piece, the family of origin, and especially the relationship with mother. That's a key area that we would always go into. And then the other thing that actually helps um just help you make like very practical changes now is to do a bit of an evaluation of your current life. Because what happens is that usually there will be things that like basically people don't make the connection between stresses and their eating patterns, whereas I can see that. So let's say you just like once I was working with someone who like, she'd had eating issues ever since like a particular age, right? And then so I was like, okay, well, what happened, at that time? And she's like, oh yeah, we moved across the country and I really didn't like the new neighborhood and all that stuff, right? So I was like, okay, well, do you think that, has something to do with when your eating patterns, began to change? And she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, So
Yeah.
those are the kind of pieces that I would draw people to, it's just understanding that I guess if I could like instill in people anything, it would just be the fact that your eating patterns are not wrong. Like as much as you might like despise them because you judge it and you think this is wrong, they really weren't wrong. They were adaptive, you know.
Yeah, they were
Mm.
developed. Yeah, for
They were
sure.
just they were just a younger version of you trying to survive in a place where you felt uncertain and you didn't really have the tools to deal with stuff. That would be
Mhm.
honestly my key message. One of them is just please don't see them as wrong. I know it's so easy in this world of pathology, right? Like everything is pathologized and like this is wrong. This is caused by that virus. This everything is like a war.
Yeah, I know. The rage bait online is abundant these days. I know because of what I do too. Like I work primarily with people in crisis, and a lot
Wow.
of people have been to 8 or 10 doctors by the time they come here, and I call it healing fatigue. Like they're just so tired of trying, and and they've done all the diets and all the things, but it's the same thing. I'm very investigative, and we look into all these pieces, and I start with simple diets for people, and even if they
Mhm.
don't cook, it's like, well, let's just start where you are. Like let's roast some chicken thighs and some butternut squash, and just basics.
Yeah.
Um, and, a lot of what I find, like in terms of you saying your diet isn't wrong, like we've developed something that helps us like survive, right?
Mhm.
And I find that it's really hard to understand what next steps are because everything online is contradictory and
Yeah.
everyone's very
Yeah.
confident about their system. And it's like, well, no, that's still not going to do it. And over the years, I've had so many patients come in that are down to like one or two foods because they just don't know what to eat. They don't know what's actually triggering them.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, like, their earth is so stressed because they're just down to one thing. And I remember one woman, she was living on the Amy's vegan mac and cheese.
Wow.
And I was like, I can see how that's delicious because
Mm.
it's got that yeast in it that tastes so good, salty and kind of buttery for vegan and all the pieces. And it's like we're just adapting to the struggle of the thing that we can't solve, but we've got to eat,
Mhm.
right? And so yeah, it's super interesting to look at that. And the message of you're not broken is so huge because so much of how things are presented online are
Mhm.
like, just drink this shake and you'll
Oh
be
my
good.
gosh, right? It's
True. So, cool. Well, I think we need to wrap up soon.
yeah.
So anything else that we should finish with?
No, I feel really good. I'm just so glad to have this conversation with you. And I actually learned so much from you about that earth element and the metal element and how it
Yeah,
translates to that, the nourishment and versus the willpower and using those elements. That is so on point, like I love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah. And it
Yeah,
resonates deeply, because I'm all about depth, so I really understand how like sometimes when you just take things back to the elemental things, people understand that on a deep level, like more than like a neuro kind of scientific
yeah.
language.
Well,
Mm.
9 times out of 10, we just need to bring the complexity down,
Yeah.
right? And keep it simple. And that's what,
Yeah.
for me, the system has been so magical, the Chinese medicine system. I'd love to hear what your dad has to say too
I
about it.
know. Yeah.
He's been practicing for a long time, right?
Long
Like
time.
over
Yeah,
50
yeah.
years.
Like 30 years maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that especially with earth issues, things get convoluted. Like if we're not digesting well, we get foggy brain.
Yes.
We get all
Yes.
these things.
Yeah.
So that's what's so beautiful is the system just helps me come back to simplification because it's like, macronutrients in this food and organic and GMOs and there's all these layers. Food is so complex,
Mm.
but it doesn't have to be,
No,
so how can we just bring it back
no,
down to some butternut squash and, simple things. So
totally.
well, I'm really glad that you had the time today. Tell everyone your website so they can check out your work.
Yeah, sure. So my website is quietlyconfident.me.
Okay.
And just you can find all my offerings on there. And I have a free offer too. I could link it in this end of the post, but I have a
Great.
grounding meditation and I also have a free offer where you learn how to just release emotional eating naturally by looking at the root causes that some will be discussed today. So I'll link
Awesome.
those. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's so good to chat, and I feel like this is going to be more than this coming.
Yay. Yeah, it was so good to chat with you, AJ. Okay,
Have a
bye.
good day.